Evet, hoş geldiniz tekrar. Son panelimizde de bize Mustafa Akkuzu
Welcome again. In our last session, Mustafa Akkuzu will be with us. He is a Udemy trainer, and he will be telling about getting to know the interface of Unity, learning the components, and learning the basic codes to develop a game. Welcome, Mustafa. Hello. Welcome. Thank you. How are you? I'm fine, thanks. How are you? Fine, thanks. If you're ready, you can start sharing your screen and I'll be here to give you any kind of support if you need. First of all, hello everyone. I would like to thank Vardiya and Cevher Hanım for her support. Let me introduce myself. For more than 10 years, I have been working on game developing and application developing, and in the last 4 years, I have been giving trainings on game developing. So I will make a small presentation about developing games with Unity. Then I will give you a small workshop for those who want to know more about how to develop games in Unity. First of all, why Unity? As you know, Unity is a multi-platform game engine. I think you should choose your platforms. For example, if you want to develop a game for Android, your platform should be Android based. But your mobile game or other game, if you want to develop a game for mobile or PC or iOS, you have to start from scratch. Unity has a main advantage here. It is multi-platform. This means a game that you develop with Unity can be almost ready for different operating systems. You don't have to redesign it from scratch. And secondly, the internet. We are quite lucky to be living at these times because accessing knowledge via internet is very easy. You don't have to memorize any codes without knowing anything. Even if you don't have Unity on your computer, you can have a small game in Unity overnight. About 10 years ago, when I first decided to learn Unity, I went to the library and I looked for some books about Unity. None of us reads any books today, leave alone going to the library. I'm saying this because we don't need that, because we have bigger things than libraries available. We should know the value of this. Most of us spend our times in vain watching videos. If we can use that time more efficiently, you can change your life. Okay, our time is limited, so it would be better if we spend our time more on Unity. I asked beforehand to everyone to download Unity because it is the best method to develop games. But it may be difficult for you to follow the steps while also implementing them. I know that this presentation is being recorded and it will be broadcast, and I will be publishing my presentation on my YouTube channel. So if you like, you can watch it later and try to repeat these steps. First of all, let's talk about Unity Hub. If you have downloaded Unity, first of all, you need to download Unity Hub. Unity Hub is a tool. It's a management tool. Here in the project section, you have a list of projects. you see the Unity version. You can create a new project, or you can add a project that is already available. And we have the install section. Here we have Unity versions that we have uploaded, that we have downloaded. If you have installed a new Unity version, you can click add and add a new Unity version or any version of Unity. Here you choose the release and click next, and you see the modules to be added. If you are going to develop games for Android, you can add the Android module or iOS or the other ones that as you can see, and click done. So your modules will be installed. So if you have just installed Unity, you can click here and click add modules to install these modules. Now create a new project. To create a new project, as you can see, there are different templates, 2D and 3D. Let's talk about these a little bit. If you want to develop a game in 2D, you don't have to choose 2D, but when you choose 2D, Unity makes certain settings for us. When we want to import our image file, you often use sprites if you're developing 2D. Unity starts importing these images as sprite. There are some settings in 2D. The Unity is the same Unity. So we choose 3D and enter a project name. Let's call this Indieway. I think the Unity is starting. It may take some time. Yes, the Unity is on. I won't go into the details of these menus. I will try to show you on an example so that you get to know Unity and also develop something at the same time. We have the scene section. This is our working environment. It's a 3D environment. Of course, you can make this 2D. So when you work in 3D, you will work in this environment very comfortably. But if you are new, I want to show you a few things. First of all, let's add a cube. To do this, you go to Game Object, and after 3D or under 3D Object, you can choose Cube. And under Hierarchy, you can choose the lists. You can see the list of all objects. Here we have the camera and the light. And we will add a cube. Here, under 3D, you can add a cube on the scene. I will tell you about some shortcuts. To zoom in and zoom out, we use the scroll button on the mouse. And when you press Alt, you click on the scroll of the mouse. And you can move the object to the right and left. And then you can press the low Alt button and click left button of the mouse to rotate the object on a center. Sometimes it may not turn around an object, then you should choose an object. And when your mouse is on the scene, you hit F, it will focus on that object. then the object will rotate on the axis of that object. And there are some tools here. So by moving the scroll button on the mouse and then moving right and left, you can manipulate this hand. And on the spare keyboard, we have forward, backward, left and right buttons, arrows, so we can move by using these buttons. And now, if we want to move this object, relocate it, we have a tool here. We have the move tool. As you can see, we have the gizmos here. Using these gizmos or by clicking this highlighted zone in the middle, you can move the object. Here, if I want to move in the X and Z axis, I hit here and I can move it, move the object. Or I can move it on the Y axis by using the gizmo on the Y axis. Let's add a plane here. It's a plane. You can add it under 3D by clicking plane. Now, we talked about moving. Now let's talk about rotating. When you click rotate, you can rotate the object. And we also have an expand tool. Using this, you can change the dimensions of your object. On the right-hand side, we have the inspector section. Here we have the position values, that is the position of the object on this coordinate plane of X, Y, Z. You see the X, Y, Z values here. Now we move the object like this. As you can see, the values change in the Z box, and you can see these values here. You can also enter values here and bring your object back to 0. And you can also adjust the rotation of the object. And you can also change the scale values. Up here we have a run button. We can use this button to test the game. When you hit it, as you can see, there is no motion because we didn't add any movements to the game. So how should we do this? We choose the cube, and in the inspector section, other than transform information, we have the box, mesh, and other components. We call these components. Each of these groups is called a component. You can also call it an add-on. Maybe we can add a rigid body here. This rigid body will turn this object into another object that is affected by gravity. Now, this gravity is affected by gravity, and it has a specific weight. And if we run this and test this, as you can see, this object will not stay in the air. It falls down on the ground. So how do we add colors? To add colors, we can use the materials. And our materials are under project section. In the project section, we have this assets class folder. all scripts, sounds, images, everything is kept under assets, including our scenes. Here, let's create a new folder. Right-click and say create, and let's call this materials. And go into the folder, right-click and hit create and add a new material. And let's call this cube. Now, as shader, we choose standard. There are other shaders here. We don't change that for now. But for colors, albedo is the standard color. Albedo will give us the real color, main color. But you can click here and choose any color you want. Maybe you can choose green. And you can adjust the metallic shades or smoothness. And you have also normal map, height map. If you work in 3D, you know this, but we won't go into details now. And we have emission. When we hit this, we turn this object into a source of light. So how do we apply this material to the cube? We drag it and leave it on into cube, and our cube is green now. Now this material can be dragged onto any material and added to materials so that it can be changed, so that it changed colors. And when you change the color, all objects to which this material is applied will change colors. Now, we also have the physics material. Physics material is found under here. We hit right-click and say create, and let's say this ball. We can apply physical material to an object, add a static friction, a dynamic friction, and bounciness to this object so that it can bounce like a ball. For example, we can add a sphere here. Let's call this a ball. And this material, when we connect this material with this ball, now this object is acting like a ball. It gets the specifications of this physical material. Of course, we don't have any motion here. Maybe we can add gravity here. Now, if we rerun and test it, I cannot say run because of the zoom application. So, okay, we hit run. And now this ball will be bouncing. And now, creating scripts. Under Assets folder, we do this procedure. We create our material. Our scene is created here. Let's create a new folder. Okay. Let's call this, let's give this a name, and with the script, we can column our objects. So we can have as many cubes as we want by using that one cube that we created. So we call this cube generator. And let's create a new folder. So to be more organized, keep your scripts in one folder, materials in another folder, scenes in another folder, images in another folder. So if you keep them organized, well, it will be better. So we call the scripts and put this in this folder. No, when we generate our scripts, Unity writes some codes into this script for us. Let's open this. And this script, to make sure that the script can be read by Unity, this script should be connected to any object in the scene. So if you don't connect it to a scene, if you don't drag it on an object, the Unity will not see it. So here we hit create empty and create an empty game set. We call this scripts. And this cube generator script can be connected to this object. You can drag and drop, or you can drag it to the inspector and drop it so that you can connect it. I will move this up. And let's open the script. To do the columning, you need to enter the prompt instantiate. There are 3 parameters to be generated. First of all, what do we want to create? We are going to create a cube. I'm sorry, we are not creating a cube generator, we are creating the cube itself. And secondly, the Unity will want us to enter the location. So if we enter vector 3.0, the XYZ values will be 0 in our location data. And we also enter the circular data. If we enter quaternion identity here, the circular values will be 0, 0. So this cube, how do we know this cube is the cube in our screen? How does it make the connection? What is this? This is a game object. So we write a variable called game object cube, and we enter public before that. Now this is a variable that can be publicly accessed. As you can see, our cube variable can be seen here. So if we choose this cube and drag it here, we can make the connection. So instead of cube, we can do the same thing with the ball. Let's do this with the ball. Now, when we run the game, the cube, this is our ball, it will access this object and it will have another one of this object at location 0, 0. Let's say run. As you can see, we have a new column.
Bunu 0,0 noktasında değil de farklı bir noktada oluşturmak istiyorsak eğer. Bu defa buraya
If we want to format at another location instead of 00, then we shall enter the relevant data. Vector 3 new will be entered there because this is a new vector 3, and as a value we can enter 1, 1, 1. And these are the location data. Click on run, and now you can see that the new column is actually there, and of course our value changed with the gravity, but we can see that the x, y and z values are 1. And with a core cycle, let's create more than one. For int e equals o, e starts with o, it is smaller than 10. If you are a new starter, it may be new for you. The purpose here is not to teach the instantiate command or core cycle. In Unity, such things are quite simple. I just want to show them to you. When we enter I++, then our I value will start by O and it will be less than 10. And it will be increased by one with every new value. And when we put it into brackets, a new type will be formed every time. And let's find different locations for this. For example, with random range command -2 and 2. In this zone it can be created, and of course these are int max, and if we put an f here it will be perceived as float. So instead of 1 2 3 you can also put rough numbers like 1.2 2.7 etc. And with again random range command you can select a second location like -2 plus 2f. It will be an haphazard location in this zone. Then there will be 10 cycles and 10 new cubes, excuse me, globes will be created. And first they bounce each other, and with that effect they are spread. The balls are spread.
Şimdi scriptimizi oluşturduk.
Now our script is created. We saw instantiate command, and now collision detection. I mean how to detect the collisions. Let's see it.
Şimdi çarpışmayı
Now, in order to control the collisions in this script, we need to enter the script over the object which will collapse. Actually, this it was an empty object first, but now let's create a new script and let's call it cube,
bu scriptimizi de
and let's connect it to our cube.
Şimdi scriptimiz objemizin üzerinde.
Our script is on our object. What to do is to detect it. First,
Bahsetmeyi atladım galiba.
I missed mentioning about the start and update methods. Our start method is while downloading your object on the stage or starting the game. For once, this is a method to be called, or it's a function. An update function is
Tekrar çağrılacak
to be retrieved at every frame. What does it mean? Actually, 30 times a second, update method will be checked. As for the start method, it is only called once at the beginning. Apart from this,
enter metodumuz
when I write collision enter, here is the name of the method.
debug
Let's enter debug log here, this command.
çarpışma gerçekleşti.
And collision occurred.
Her
I wrote. When there is any collision, then this script will be seen on the screen
şu anda göremedim.
on our console. And now we cannot see it because there is no collision. By the way, when you first start Unity, a default screen will be shown. I generally use these screens, therefore this view is coming first when I started. Under Window and General, you can click on Console and you can start console screen here. So let's open it and click on Run, and you can see
Yaklaşık 6
our cube collided for 6 times. And let's now decommission our script and run again.
Evet. Küpümüz yere
Yes,
düştüğünde çarpışma
the
gerçekleşti
cube
diyelim.
fell down and
Peki oyunumuza
collision
devam
occurred.
istiyorsak
And if we want to add sound to our game, what to do?
mesela
For sound,
gerçekleşti değil de
instead of collision occurred,
bir ses çıkar.
we can
Bunun için
write another command for creating sound. For this,
source command
we need the audio source command. Audio source dot play clip at points. A certain sound file
çalma işlemi
will be played at a certain point. For this, we use this command. And first of all, our clip, our sound
ardından
is entered. And then
kısmına ses diyeceğiz.
I write sound here. And then where to play it? We are entering this. This is a three-dimensional game. Therefore, at which point the sound is given, then it will be the source of the sound. So if there are two loudspeakers or if you have headsets, you will hear more towards the source of the sound. We again ensure it with factor 3 and 0, I mean 000 point, and as for the sound, we can again enter public audio clip and sound text.
Şimdi gelelim sesimizi
Now,
içeri aktarmaya ve sesimizi
let's
küpümüze bağlama olayına.
connect our sound to the cube and
İçeri aktarma işlemi için yani
transfer it inside. For the images and sounds to transfer them, these materials must be chosen in the project part by clicking right on them, or in under the asset menu we can click on import new assets so that they can be transferred to the game. Or you can also drag the sound directory to the asset store on your Unity and then select a sound from there. For example, those sounds to be connected to our cube. Our cube will fall down, and when the collision occurred, there will be a sound now. Let's see.
Siz duyabiliyor musunuz? Emin değilim.
Did you hear it? I don't know. Let's retry. Yes, when it fell down and contacted the ground, we heard this sound. Now, not when the collision occurred, but when we click on the sound. When we click on the cube, we want to hear the sound. So what to do about it? Instead of using the collision enter method, then this time we will use on mouse down
Metodumuz var arkadaşlar.
method.
Bu script'in hangi objem üzerindeyse
Instead, on the object we want, we will hear a sound when we click on it. And let's copy this command line to this place, and then let's connect it to our cube, and multiplying the cube will help us. We have 7 cubes and 7 soundtracks here, and I will remove the rigid body feature of the cube, and I do not want my cube to move, and I also remove the ball First, I will reset this cube to the 000 point, and all the features will be reset. Now our first cube is at 0 point, the second one is at 2, third cube, or let me say second cube at 1, let's call it 2. This is the third, fourth, this is the fifth and the sixth cubes. And let's change the colors of a few cubes here. Let's come to the material part and click on create and make the ground white. In order to see the differences of the interim cubes so that we can differentiate them. Let's expand our plane. This is our working platform. Change the camera angle now because it is not at the place that we want. We will select our camera and we will carry it to this side so that we can approach to the cubes. Click on run here. When I click on the objects, a sound is heard. Once I click, if we want a different musical note to be played, then we will do the connections. We already connected the do notation, and if we want the other notations um, to be heard, then we will make the connection for the other cubes. For the third cube, for example, connect me. For the second one, we connected re and the other musical notations. Fa, sol, la, and finally si. When we run, what will we hear? Clicking on the first cube, we will hear do. And when we click on the other cubes, we will hear whatever the notation is connected. Well, we have time. What can we do apart from this? On the keyboard, we can how to detect the button pressed over the keyboard. If an input I enter and the command get key down, if the key is pressed, which key is pressed, detecting this. And I'm entering the Keycode command. For example, Z button was pressed in brackets. I want to see it, I want to detect it. And of course, the same command is run for all the cubes. And when a Z button is pressed, the same will be heard for all the cubes. And let's turn our sound into an array. I mean, more than one sound files can be accommodated in that variable. Let's create such a variable And if Z button is pressed, the zero element zero of our array will be played. Similarly, for the other musical notations,
Pardon. Büyük harfler yazıyorum. X,
let's write it in capitals. I am continuing with the line on the keyboard. Z, X, C, V, B, N,
ve M tuşlarını da kullanalım.
and M buttons. Let's use them. And as Z is 0, X will be 1, C will be 2, and 3, 4, 5, 6 will come later.
Pardon, alt olacak. Kaydediyorum.
I'm recording, I'm saving it.
Şimdi
Now
küplerimiz yerinde kalsın.
our cubes stay where they are, and now I will connect them to our script object.
Ve sesler kısmında gördüğünüz gibi kaç
And
elemandan
in the
oluştuğunu,
sounds
kaç
part,
elemandan
I
oluştuğunu
can see the number of elements. Actually, there are 7 sound elements, and these are my sound tracks, and I'm connecting them one by one.
La ve son olarak si sesi.
And the last note notation also connected. Now run
Ne
it.
yapacak klavyeden?
When I press the keyboard buttons, depending on which button I press, I will hear these musical notations.
Bahsetmek istediğim bu kadar. Sorularınız
And
varsa
that's all from me for today. If you have any questions, I can receive them. I think we have lost 10 minutes now.
Evet, soru Q&A kısmında soru gözükmüyor.
There's no question in Q&A
Eğer
part.
varsa chat'e de yazabilirsiniz
You can
sorularınızı.
also write your questions in the chat box if you have any.
Soru yoksa bir 10 dakika daha göstermek istediğiniz başka şeyler varsa
There's
gösterebilirsiniz.
no question. You can show us if any other elements or components you want to show there.
bahsetmek istediğim bir şey var aslında.
Actually, there is one thing I want to mention,
Şimdi özellikle
especially
geliştirenler için
for the new developers.
bahsetmek istiyorum bu konuda.
I want to talk about this issue. Most of us
Olabilir aslında.
may have a game project in our mind, and
Mümkünse öncelikle
if possible,
dahil olmalarını.
they may go to a course. I mean, education may be appropriate for them. Why? Because some friends, especially my students, do not complete their education, and after reaching to some point they start their own projects, and they are actually drowned in their projects because they do not have adequate knowledge. And for example, a person who doesn't know knowledge tries to
oluşturmak istiyorsa ne yapıyor? Oturup kendi yapay zekasını
uh,
geliştirmek zorunda.
tries to create an object following another one, a hunter for example, but he or she has to use the artificial intelligence. But if he or she knows it, he may use it, or else he cannot use it. And there are various ways of using it in Unity. The more you know, the more knowledge you have accumulated, the easier it will be. Sometimes my students ask such questions as, we want to develop a game like Clash of Clans, but that company has 180 employees. There is nothing to say about it, but you must start with small steps. If you want to develop a car, first start with chart or chart, and then you can improve it. You can take further steps to the future, and also examine the trials, examine the others, and do a good plan and develop your plan. If possible, prepare flowcharts for you, and most importantly, do not start with big projects. Start with small steps. Small, but the best will be very good. And whatever you do, try your best.
Teşekkür ederiz. Bir Can Ata'dan soru
Thank
geldi
you very
burada
much.
önce.
There's a
Onu ileteyim
question
size.
from Can
İki
Ata.
boyutlu oyun yaparken genel olarak Unity öğrenmeye mi odaklanalım yoksa sadece
Shall
yapmak
we focus on
istediklerimizi mi
learning
öğrenelim?
Unity for 2D games or just learn
İki boyutlu oyun yaparken genel
what
olarak
we desire
Unity'yi
to do?
öğrenmeye mi odaklanalım yoksa sadece yapmak istediklerimizi mi
What
öğrenelim?
do you think?
Şimdi her ne olursa olsun.
Actually,
Yani
whatever
tamamen
your
bahsediyorum ama nedir?
actual desire is,
Üç boyutlu
I mean,
oyunda
you
öğrenmeme
want
gerek
to
var mı?
create
Diye bir
a
soru
2D
aldığımızda
game, and you mean that you do not need to learn 3D elements, do you mean? It's not important to learn 2D or 3D. Actually, learning itself is important. Learn 3D as well. And between 2D and 3D, there is not much difference in Unity. In 2D, for example, let me open it again and share my screen.
Şimdi iki boyutlu çalıştığımız zaman genelde çalışma
When we
yaptığımız
work on 2D, generally our working platform is 2D. Actually, we see our objects from one side, but our objects are always in 3D. When we add a sprite here, for example, let's focus on this point.
iki de bir sprite oluşturduğumuzu düşünelim.
When we form a sprite here in 2D, it is seen 2D, but in fact it is also an object in the 3D platform.
Üç boyutlu ortama geçtiğim zaman
When you go to the 3D, you will see it better in the 3D platform. This is an ordinary object. Therefore, learning 2D or 3D is not important. It is important to learn in general. Again, while adding the components, you will be adding to budget to 2D. All the images, all the tests will be the same.
dediğim gibi
Only
bu defa
what do we do here? Our cam
oyunumuzu geliştirdik.
looks from one side
O yüzden bana
and we
sorarsanız
develop our game. Therefore,
eğitimimizi
first we need to complete our education seriously. Whether it is 2D or 3D, it doesn't matter. If you are learning 2D, for example, we cannot say that you do not need terrain. You need to learn terrain as well. This is my opinion. Another question about documentation use. Do you recommend any way? What do you mean by documentation?
yani öğrenme amaçlı mı?
For learning or what kind of documentation?
Mustafa
Can
Bey'e.
you please explain it to Mustafa over the chat?
Unity için evet öğrenme
Unity
amaçlı.
için, and for Unity, yes, for learning purposes. Yes, if
Gönül vermiş. Ben bu
you want to do this job and you want to learn it very well, I strongly recommend to have good English knowledge. Many sources, especially Unity's own sources, are in English, and those documents are accessible at the website of Unity, and each command is explained, adding objects, are all explained in detail in English. And as a document, of course, there are also translated documents or translated or rewritten in Turkish. But if you know English, you can directly learn from the source. Therefore, learn English first.
Çok teşekkür
You
ederiz
understand
Mustafa Bey
them?
geldiğiniz için,
Okay,
katıldığınız
thank
için.
you very much,
Ağzınıza
Mustafa,
sağlık.
for your
Emeğinize sağlık.
participation and for the information you shared.
Heh, gelmiş evet.
There is
Can Ata
just
yine
one more
sormuş. Size
question
belli sayıda örnek
from John
olarak 5-10
Atta.
diyelim oyun geliştirdikten
For
sonra
example, after
büyük
developing
çapta
5
bir
or
oyun
10
geliştirme maratonuna hazır olur
games,
musunuz?
will we be ready for developing a game of 1 or 2 years? Of course you can do. You can do it at the very beginning. If you have a big project idea in your mind, start it then. But start with small steps again. For example, a battle game you will develop. There will be different fronts, different war zones, battle zones. But start with small steps. I mean, first, learn the game control mechanism. It may be a small zone without much visual effects. So make your project smaller. And after achieving that smaller project, continue with the next levels so that you will sustain your motivation because you will be successful with tiny steps and you will continue because after a few months or after a certain period you may lose your motivation. What's important here is not to lose your motivation and complete that project. Therefore, take tiny steps. It will be much more useful.
Evet. Başka soru yoksa ben çok teşekkür edeceğim tekrar size. Son olarak da
There is
cevaplarımı
no other
davet
question.
edeceğim.
I'd like to
Konuşmamızı
thank you very
sonlandırmak için.
much. I'd like to invite Jawhar for the closing speech.
Teşekkürler tekrar katıldığınız
Thank
için.
you
Görüşmek üzere.
and see you.